Hello and welcome to Monday's episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Robert Borthwick and today I'm joined by a man we've laid down arms of slagging off players from each other's teams that have got terrible injuries. It's Tony Anderson. How are you, Tony?
I am very well. I don't know if you should tell you that, because some people do cringe at people laughing at injuries. There's two separate camps of people who just have that as a joke. And I don't actually mean ill on them. It is just something to say. People who like, oh no, you can't ever talk to that. The old boys would always be very against any sort of humour about a wee ACL or something like that. Can't say anything these days.
It's just banter, mate. Listen, it is the woke left of Scottish football that is trying to cancel me and Tony for laughing at, I don't know, Kieran Bowie ripping his muscle off his bone or something like that.
Well, that was sad, so enough of that.
So we've got your standard Monday review show here. We had a festival of Scottish football over the weekend. A lot of goals, a lot of them scored by Celtic, so we're just going to talk about them last because it's boring now. But we had a couple of cracking games in here, and obviously Tony's Hibernian and my Heart of Midlothian are mixed in there as well, so you'll get some personal opinions. But I think the only place to start, Tony, it's the second week in a row that we've seen a Scottish Premiership game that's had late drama and a 3-3 draw. We'll go to Rugby Park where it finished Kilmarnock 3, Dundee United 3. Dundee United took the lead through Louis Moult. Kelly came out the second half like an absolute freight train. David Watson scoring twice, including an early goal of the season contender. Marley Watkins on the score sheet again. But as has been the case, Tony, Kelly cannot buy a win just now, and Craig Sibbald, and then a late penalty from Ross Graham securing a point for Dundee United. Kilmarnock, they're not in a completely dissimilar boat from Hearts right now, in that they had a great season last season and now they find themselves languishing towards the bottom of the table. What do you think is going wrong for them so far this season, and can you put your finger on why that happened at the weekend as well?
Well, I think the obvious one is the huge difference between them defensively between last season. I think it screams in everyone's face. We were talking that we thought that they had the best defence outside the Old Firm last season, and you could actually look at it as that they probably had like 6 of the best defenders that you could, even the ones that they didn't use, most other teams would have been delighted to have them. And now this year, there's the chopping and changing of the shape. There's a chopping and changing of who's going to be used in defence. Not always McInnes wanting to make these decisions, because obviously people keep getting fucking sent off. But in this scenario, he's sort of done, and he's done this a few times, and a few team clubs do like doing this in Scotland, when they have these halfway formations. And he seems to have done this with Corey and Daba, who had a really good season last season and has not really been great since he came back. I would argue against Hibs, I thought he was pretty poor. He arguably could have got sent off in that. He's actually not started that many games, considering how big a deal it felt, him coming back. But in this game, he was sort of like half playing in midfield, and they were switching between like a back 3 and a back 4 in the game, which is really, really fluid. But without being sort of rude to McInnes or Kilmarnock, I don't know, that rigidness seems to be more my vibe from Kilmarnock, and maybe this is showing that maybe there is a manager who would always think is so cocksure of himself and obviously has such a body of work behind him, maybe getting to that stage where he's second guessing himself, Rob.
Just be as rude as you like, Tony. He's not going to listen.
Well, McInnes is always quite a good guy as well. I mean, he's a very popular man in Scottish football, I think.
He is, and he's kind of earned that reputation, which is why he's got so much money in the bank that I think a lot of, Scottish football, let alone Kelly fans, are giving him this time to try and work it out. I think you're right. They're more soft-centred than they were last season, and I think that the starkest contrast is probably in this game. They started the game poorly. The first half was poor, like you say. Square pegs and round holes. Corey and Daba playing more of a midfield role instead of just going to a back 4. But the second half, as I said, they came out like a freight train. David Watson came on and immediately made that impact. He scored twice within the first 10 or so minutes in that second half. And it was like, right, okay, Kilmarnock are back. Derek McInnes' Kilmarnock are back.
They don't seem to be, they're what's the word I'm looking for? Sloppy. Sloppy, giving the ball away. And we spoke to Craig Anderson about it. He just said, really casual. And it's so like, goes against everything that they are. And it seems bizarre that when they're in this mode of not picking up results and conceding a lot of goals, you picture a McInnes team grabbing each other by the throats, making sure that doesn't happen. Obviously having sort of like bags and bags of training and bags of ways that they've been, because they played very much the same way last year, and it was very confident. Even if they changed sort of personnel or if they changed shape, it was always the same things they were doing. So it seems bizarre that at this stage of the season with all that sloppiness and being casual would come in. That makes me think that it's more lacking of confidence, because I just don't believe this Kilmarnock group of players in this scenario with Derek McInnes as a manager would be sloppy and casual. Doesn't make any sense.
It makes zero sense, but then we've seen this sort of like difficult second season syndrome, I suppose, from starting, the previous or ending the previous one really strongly. They had their European games, competed really well against the likes of Bruges and Copenhagen in those games as well. But just sometimes it's like a team-wide mentality thing. It doesn't matter who the manager is. It doesn't matter if you've got, your same captain, Kyle Vassell's playing, David Watson, such a good player. You've still got the likes of Robbie Dees in defence, Stuart Finlay, obviously missing a wee bit this season. But it doesn't really matter when it's the whole team are just sort of feeling a bit down on themselves. And this result here, especially, and I know we'll probably talk about it, but it seemed like a bit of a harsh decision at the very end to give that penalty kick. I'm not too sure if it was linesman gave it, referee gave it. If VAR, obviously, I think at that stage they can't really disallow it because it's been given. There's not enough to overturn it. Kelly maybe thought that they'd actually done enough to see the game out at that stage, but it doesn't really matter because the damage had very much already been done. And I think that when you are feeling sorry for yourself, or maybe when you've not had the best run of form, these things do tend to, they come like London buses, they come in twos and threes. The mistakes start to compound and sort of pile on top of each other and pile on top. And it takes a bit of luck, to be honest with you, to get yourself out of, not a death spiral, there's only 6 or 7 games into the season, but it takes a bit of something to just be like, right, okay, we can reset now and we can sort of go again. From a Dundee United point of view, Tony, we'll not talk about him defensively because I don't think he's that good defensively. But Lucas Stevenson, right wing back, obviously, he's had a couple of errors so far this season, but 2 assists, and he won the penalty in this game for Dundee United. He's shown what he can do in an attacking sense in terms of that wing back position.
So he's on loan for Liverpool. So is this the right hand sided Owen Beck? Liverpool only send their wing backs to Dundee, where they are looked after. It was quite, because at the very start of the game, he should make a cut back to Louis Moult really early, and he doesn't do it. I think he shoots instead. And Moult's clearly not happy, and it is the wrong decision. And what's good to see from a young player straight away, he learns for that. And the quality of that first goal, like Ferry, who, he's fast becoming just, I think, a podcast favourite. I don't think anyone's arguing that Ferry's been one of the sort of signings of the season. And it's like, with Ferry, it's seen like another string added to his bow. So we've seen quite a lot of things from him, like running power, dribbling power, great crossing, good defending his back post well. And now we're adding in sort of like really, really slick, volleyed, sexy passes right out to the other side, and it's a really lovely goal. It gets out to Stevenson, and he does well. It's like a touch, maybe takes him a bit wide, but he obviously has learned his lesson, knows exactly where Moult's going to be, and he just taps into the net. And then from there, Kilmarnock, like you say, they do manage to come back. Dees and Kennedy are a joke for that second goal, but then for the first goal, but let's just get to it. David Watson coming off the bench. We've touched on it a couple of times. He comes off, and that first goal, is that goal of the season already, Robert?
It's got to be a contender. It's one of those. It's a funny one because it's a bicycle kick. He's got his back to goal, but it kind of floats in. Do you know what I mean? It's not.
I don't know. I'm gonna have that argument. That's a proper over a kick goal for me. Not one of those stupid hooked ones that loop into the net. I hate them. I hate when you read overhead goal. It's like when you get the classic Scottish football individual dribbling goal, and then you watch and it just means no one's tackled them, and they've been able to run. They've been able to run 50 yards and shoot. But this one, it is proper acrobatic. It gets up so high, and he gets a proper strike on it.
He does. Listen, I absolutely adore David Watson. I think he is, as I said, like Lennon Miller. Obviously, his sort of his upward trajectory means that David Watson maybe is slightly getting forgotten about in that sort of conversation of the best young players in Scottish football. And really, Lennon Miller's amazing, so maybe that's right. But David Watson, man, it's such a cool goal. And you look at his goal at Pittodrie last season, and just the ability that the laddie has.
Is that the Bergkamp one with the touch and the spin and the volleys?
Just class, and it's like it's seeing, like, I know that you are very much similar to me in the fact that like Pep Guardiola and that have killed football because everyone just like runs towards a defender and passes it backwards now. But we've got guys like David Watson who's like, do you know what? I'm going to flick it over someone and take a shot. Like, we've still got a bit of fun from players like this.
The beauty of Watson as well is it's not just a scorer of great goals. But what I love is that he's not got like a trademark goal. He's already. It's like there's like you used the example. We had the dribbling one last season where he scored. You've got the one that's all about like technique and thinking he's possibly the only player on the park that could have actually executed that, and it all looks very deliberate. And now you're getting sort of acrobatic overhead kicks. And McInnes, so he doesn't put all his faith in Watson. I think that's because he isn't quite a rigid player and maybe he struggles a bit in the actual engine room. It can get, let's be honest, it gets tasty in there in Scottish football, but you feel like he's developing quite nicely at Kilmarnock. And the fact that he is sometimes used in different positions, you use him in different way, he turns to him when he needs him, which adds like, there's an element of responsibility to him. So it's an absolutely brilliant from Watson. It's an exciting weekend for young Scottish players.
100%. Just quickly, finally on Dundee United, Tony, I think quite quietly they've kind of gone about their business quite nicely so far this season. They've not been outstanding, but they've only lost once. That was to Rangers, obviously a couple of weeks ago, and they're just sort of bubbling along quite nicely. Have they kind of exceeded expectations, and is Jim Goodwin no longer really that sort of joke figure that he was for the past couple of years?
I find that really tough because they have got off to a great start, and I've seen them in some games where I was impressed with them, but they seem to be playing in fits and starts rather than like being convinced. But I think people, they're caught in the middle because they're Dundee United. There's an expectation of them anyway when they come out, so they don't get the same grace that another club who gets promoted would from us, especially for people talking about the footballers. Because any other promoted club playing in fits and starts like this and picking up loads of points would be getting rave reviews, but there's still people a bit down on Dundee United, and it's fair enough because there is always going to be an expectation on them. But they managed to dig themselves out of a hole in this, and I mean the decision, and there was a few of these when I think it's Stevenson makes a tackle, and it eventually gets the goal gets chopped off. That was mad. It was so obviously like the run of the mill slide tackle, caught round the side to get out. And then Napier almost actually gets in the way of the shot as well. Like, come on, sir. Come on now. And obviously there's VAR actually doing something good for a change. And they got to say they're very dodgy penalty, but you get luck. You get luck eventually. But you said earlier, the penalties, you'd be fucking fuming if that got given against you.
100%. 100%. Let's move now from Dundee United let's go to their city rivals, Dundee, at Dens Park, following the tragic death of Fabian Caballero, a real podcast favourite as well as a favourite, obviously, of the guys at Dundee. Really sad loss through the week. They were hosting Aberdeen, the juggernaut, the Jimmy Thelen juggernaut that is Aberdeen right now. Ended with a victory for the Dons, another victory. They've now, I think that's now their second best start to a season of all time. Really, really impressive stuff. Goals from Kevin Nisbet, Topi Keskinen, and the Simon Murray penalty right on half time. So all the scoring was done before the full-time whistle. But Tony, I mean, Aberdeen are an interesting one because there's still, for some reason, from some people, a question of like, are they actually that good? And then you see guys like Kevin Nisbet and Dimitar Mitov speaking through the week saying, no, I think there's a lot more to come from this team. So there's maybe an agreement even from the people inside Pittodrie. It's like, yeah, do you know what? We've got all these wonderful results in the bank. We're putting points on the board, but we're not as good as we can be, which is quite a scary thought when they've got 18 points from 18.
I watched this game and I've only managed to catch in the league. I think this is only the second time that I'd seen Aberdeen for 90 minutes, and in the first half they were really impressive. The makeup of the team, like you're saying, I mean, they lost they lost Gay for this game. And so obviously that's a huge miss for the way he's been playing. Obviously he's scored a lot of goals. He's been playing in a sort of wide position. But I thought they were really impressive. And it's the Keskinen came in so he's not even actually been even playing every single game. But what a difference he makes, because with Nielsen, I mean, I've spoken this podcast at length with Fowler about how good Nielsen looks and how much I didn't quite expect it to be this good. But he sort of plays that pivot. He plays the ball in the last third, and he allows Shinnie to go box to box. But it's people probably call it a 4-2-3-1. I don't think it's like that at all. When you watch it, Shinnie gets so much license to go forward. They've got so much football in that midfield because you've got Clarkson in there who doesn't have to worry too much about defending as much. You've got McGrath who likes to come in off the wide areas and create overloads in the centre of the park. McGrath ends up everywhere when you're watching him. He's a lot different a player than I think I respected him or thought of him as maybe in recent season. And now Keskinen's a clever signing because the one thing they maybe were lacking was pace, like pure pace, pure ball carrying. McGrath can dribble a bit, but again, it's not going to go to the byline. He's not going to stretch a team. So with that added into that and the balance that they get with Nielsen in there, and then when you add Kevin Nisbet into that, who hasn't actually had that great a start in terms of his all-round game. I know, obviously, I've seen that Kevin Nisbet play tons of times. There's more to come. But with his ability he's actually good with his back to goal, Nisbet, when he's at his best, when he's at his sharpish. And when he drops off, the interchanging ability of that whole, everyone that plays in behind Kevin Nisbet, they're all going to have so much fun. And Nielsen just allows it because he's fine in there, completely on his Todd. And and then, as I say, when you go back into Rubezic has been much better. Malloy has been a bizarre find. Mitov is, I mean, I'm going through the entire team here, but why the hell not? Mitov's obviously just a ridiculously good season. But in this game, man of the match for me was Nicky Devlin, who is a player I absolutely love. Nicky Devlin, and I spoke to Tom, and he was saying that, and it's not ridiculous that there might be an angle where he does a Lewis Stevenson or a Paul Hanlon style thing and sneaks a wee Scotland cap at some time because they just need him for a friendly at some point or whatever.
And honestly, why not? Like, Nicky Devlin, he was good for Livy. He was always good for Livy. It was one of those, it's like when Aberdeen signed him, everyone just went, yeah. Like, of course, that makes complete sense. Like, he is a kind of meat and potatoes, but then he's also added a bit more to his game. Like, in an attacking sense, he bombs. He doesn't run. Mm-hmm. Like, he bombs up and down there. His work rate is phenomenal. He creates opportunities. He's got a couple of goals in the past few months as well. And he just, he's... I don't know if you could ever describe a fullback like him as exciting to watch, but he's the sort of fullback that you'd love to have on your side because you're like, right, absolutely. If someone gets past him, he's getting back at them. If someone gets past him, then they've earned the right to do that. And I think that's such a cool attribute to have as a fullback. I think when you're going through the entire team there as well, it's like Devlin has been a standout. Scotland squad is announced tomorrow, I believe. I haven't heard anything about him getting into it, but in months to come, if Aberdeen are still going the way they're going, then absolutely, why not? Like, why not? Like, look at who we've been playing there. Tony Ralston. I would rather have Nicky Devlin in my team than Tony Ralston. I would. And that's just a fact. So, you look at those sort of details. Interesting that you mentioned Jamie McGrath. I think the Jamie McGrath disrespect needs to end now. I think eyebrows are raised after the season at Dundee United, and obviously kind of coming back with his tail between his legs a wee bit from Wigan Athletic when Aberdeen first signed him. He's just grown into this kind of all-action, creative, sort of magic-making footballer who's, even when the chips were down for Aberdeen last season, he was still good. He was still scoring goals. He was still creating. And I think the one thing that is scary to look at is that, possibly a Jimmy Thelland Duke to come back in as well. Because he's still, and obviously with Papagay being out, there's opportunities for guys like Duke to come back in and say, right, okay, well, we've got a phenomenal, really fit and firing front line just now. Why can't I come back and do what I did a couple of years ago and add more pace? Add, to Keskinene, there's still pace there. There's a ball carrier there, someone who can take players on and score goals. Like, have Aberdeen blown teams away, properly blown them away this season? Not really. But are Aberdeen going to improve? I think they will. And I think that's the prospect we all have to get on board with. And I said it on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I love winding up Aberdeen fans. It's very easy to do, but it is just winding them up. I think there's nothing I can do other than sit back and say fair play, because what a season they're having. What an appointment Jimmy Thelland has been. And they're setting the benchmark now. Hearts did it last season. Aberdeen are very much doing it this season. And it's hard to see, when teams are on a run of form like this, it's hard to see where their next loss is coming from.
Yeah, I just say because a player like Clarkson, you feel like it's going to get sharper and better. He's playing in a position further forward where he doesn't have to worry about playing that quarterback role that he played a little bit under Robson. So you expect him to get better. You expect him to maybe come to the player that he was that first year where he was on loan. And then with that, everything just seems solid. They've got, I'd say, McKenzie and Devlin. Like McKenzie's turning into like Lewis Stevenson. I feel like he's going to be there for, like, I feel like McKenzie's going to end up being there. Not quite good enough to move on, but very much fine for Aberdeen at left back, and he'll be reliable and he'll probably improve over the years. And then you've got, and I think we're going to Devlin again. I mean, I loved it. I think I've said this a few years back. Devlin reminds me of David Gray so much. And pretty much everything he does, even the way he runs, because he's a bomber, but he's not particularly, he doesn't look classy on the ball, but then he's able to dig out crosses really well. He defends his back post absolutely brilliantly. So like for a fullback, he's also like a centre-half's dream in there. And then, as I said, with Nisbet, the goal he scores is the most Kevin Nisbet goal you'll ever see. And this maybe probably brings us on to Dundee maybe quite nicely, because what they'll be frustrated about is, I said, Aberdeen looked good in the first half and they were in control of the game, but they still weren't creating like tons and tons of chances. Like, the fact remains that it's individual errors that lead to the goals. And what will be frustrating for Dundee is that they moved back to a back three, and it looked like it was suiting them. When I was watching it the first 20 minutes, I thought Clark Robertson in the middle of the back three looked really, really strong. He was winning so many headers, and his positioning was really great. And I think Portales is I think he's better as a right centre back because it gives him more of that room to come out with the ball and play. But the fact remains that Comitio he fucks it up when the ball over the top, and then Keskinen's just able to slot off, and Nisbet does that lovely thing where he just puts it back where it's come from. The goalie's wrong-footed, and it's just absolutely perfect. And then the second goal is much the same. Keskin just gets to break forward and whisper it quietly. Should Carson be playing instead of McCracken, Rob?
Are you talking about Scotland's McCracken here? I mean,
this is the thing. I watched him there. I was like, don't know about that. Don't know about him at all.
I just listen. He's such an imposing figure, and he looks like a goalkeeper. Do you know what I mean? It's like if someone was to draw a goalkeeper, there he is. Carson is coming to the twilight of his career. Obviously, we know that, but is he currently the better goalkeeper? I probably would say so. I feel like McCracken just has a couple of, and it's never glaring errors. It's never glaring errors, but it's like the ball goes into the back of the net and you're like, should the keeper have done better with that? Not, that's a huge clanger by the keeper.
Yeah.
It's a question rather than a statement. But I think that Trevor Carson is just slightly more reliable. And right now, yes, obviously McCracken, he's only 24. He's getting international recognition. You want to give him every opportunity you can possibly give him. But do you do that to the detriment of the team? And do you do that to the detriment of getting results? I don't know. I would probably, if I was Tony Dock, I'd probably be playing Trevor Carson this season and then getting McCracken in fully from next season. Is
Dock doing something that managers often don't do because they don't get to? Is it maybe a show of strength, the fact that how comfortable he maybe feels at Dundee, that he's bringing on this goalkeeper who maybe isn't slightly as good, but they know that this needs to happen. They know that they need to make sure maybe McCracken would leave Dundee possibly if these weren't the opportunities, and they probably think it can be developed, and they're and soon, and they know that next season it's probably going to have to happen. Then is he maybe? That's just long-term planning like that is unusual from managers because they just don't get to do it. And I don't. It's not even a criticism. But maybe it shows. Maybe there's like two sides of a coin there. It's like shows the benefit of where Tony Dock is, but ultimately, if you're a Dundee fan, I just prefer my best goalkeeper to be playing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of it. And if you're a fan, you kind of want the best players to be playing every week as well. And I think that's the way you need to look at it. McCracken has had a few great performances for Dundee, but yeah, we've got to you've got to be honest sometimes. I think Carson might be slightly better. And
it was a bit of a shame at Dundee, obviously Silla having to go off at half-time with epileptic shock, as it turns out. But hopefully, at least it's one of those, it's bad that happened, and I'm sure it was. And credit Dundee, because they came out and they went for it second half. I feel like Aberdeen sort of allowed them a bit of that, if I'm being brutally honest. But Dundee weren't able to create too many great chances, but it must, tell me it's not harrowing being ushered out your dressing room when your mates collapsed and people are worried. And luckily, as I said, it sounds like everything's fine and he should recover. He might miss a game or whatever. But then when that happens, like you're already down, you're down Silla, you've just lost McInnes. Then the main crux of the team that everyone was raving about is suddenly not there. But they done their best. Tiffany had a great effort that Mitov made a brilliant save with, but maybe they could have brought in sort of Main and Murray early doors. And a stat for you, Robert Borthwick. Simon Murray's first ever goal at Dens.
Really?
Yes.
My goodness, yeah, that is a phenomenal stat. I'm a huge fan of that. Thank you so much for sharing. I would if you'd asked me, like, if you just posed that as a question and said how many goals do you think Simon Murray scored at Dens Park, I'd have been like, I don't know, 10. Like, it feels right. But yeah, I think that's the sort of question, isn't it? It's like, do you just unleash the terrifying running power of Main and Murray together? And just say, like, nah, do you know what? We're just going to run over the top of you with two big, strong running guys who will just absolutely cause you hell for 90 minutes. Like, I don't know. It would be harsh on Tiffany. Tiffany's been great, but it's one of those things. Just, would it be quite fun to watch from our neutral point of view? 100%. Yeah, just watching them clatter into people for 90 minutes. Yes.
And just think maybe there when you're playing three at the back, it makes you maybe ask Aberdeen a few more questions in that defensive third. But who knows? Scott Fraser was in. Braybrook sort of like looked okay. Like you can see the flashes of what they want to do. So a lot of questions for Dundee quite quickly. The season's, they had a couple of good results at the start, and now we are getting like, they've not won in a while. Injuries are coming. They've sold their sort of star player. Now you're going with Scott Fraser, Braybrook, who you don't really know about, and Silla might be injured. You're like, I don't know. How long's Tiffany's form going to stay? Because this is like him playing above himself. You know what I mean? Maybe it starts to get a bit worrying. And then it's a big game they've got next week, them in Kilmarnock. Because Kilmarnock need the 3 points. And if they get them, then Dundee start to look like, well, it's not a good start to the season. That has been absolutely wiped out. So yeah, interesting times.
100%. We talk about credit in the bank. I think Tony Dock very rightly has a lot of credit in the bank, and it's like you're kind of given the excuses there as well, the injuries, the sales of McInnes and stuff like that. So it's an interesting few weeks ahead. It's like Dundee, did they punch above their rate last season? Is that kind of where they should be? Is that kind of where they're going to end up again this season? I would say probably mid-table. I think that's where it's going to be, but it's going to be really interesting to see how they deal with all these things going forward. But I'd like, through gritted Hearts fan teeth, I quite like this Dundee side, and I think they will continue to be quite good. Another side who have began to put some form together, playing some good stuff, and with the hottest property in Scottish football is Motherwell. They came out 2-1 winners against St Mirren at the weekend. Lennon Miller scoring a double, adding to his late goal in the League Cup against Dundee United. Killian Phillips scoring a wonderful goal for St Mirren to put them 1-0 up in this game, and 2 red cards as well. Dan Casey turning into Trevor Carson or McCracken, I don't know, just a goalkeeper and saving it on the line. Scott Tanser, I feel bad for him with the 2 yellows that he got. I felt like there were 2 quite soft yellows, but he was also dismissed for St Mirren. But Motherwell were able to see the game out. We don't want to just talk about Lennon Miller, but I feel like we do kind of have to just start with him. Get him out the way first. There's vague rumours about Crystal Palace and a couple of teams in Europe, vying for a £6 million signature just now, but it kind of feels like he's getting onto a plane now where it's like, right, he's actually way and above beyond good enough for this league now, and he's still only 17, 18. He's a ridiculous talent. Yeah,
really is, and again, similar to Kilmarnock with Watson, is that he's they have to use him more than Watson, I would say, Motherwell, because they lack these styles of players. They lack creative players. But the other beauty, just similar to what I was saying with Watson, is that he's had to play a few roles already, Miller. And in a very, very young career, he's played like proper centre midfield. He's been shunted out wide. He's now playing as dual 10s. So you feel like someone's development's good that they're going through that, because like Watson, again, they never look shit. And you're still wondering, I'm not even sure where their best position is or where they'd be best. And you're seeing with this now that Miller is Like he's got the capability for goals and assists. So hopefully we don't get a Gordon Strachan situation where someone rips all the fun bits out of him, like he did with Scott Brown. But I don't think that's an issue for Lennon Miller, because he's just ridiculously talented, and it always just like, you'll know what I mean when they're 70 and they just take to it like that. It's like they've always been meant to be here, and there's never any sort of bother. Just how does that happen? How is there not like, it's like they're just not nervous in the slightest.
100%, and it's great to see that sort of thing as well. I think it's like, we're talking about Lennon Miller, but Ewan Wilson in that team as well. He is improving week on week on week. I think he's one of them that's like, he was maybe thrown in a wee bit, and you're thinking, right, he's definitely got flaws, and they're quite visible flaws, especially when you're playing in a wing back position. It's quite an important role because you're offering the width to the team. But he is just getting better and better. And again, it's another young guy that's been given this opportunity by Stuart Kettlewell, and physically he just looks like he can dominate down that left hand side. He's looked really, really good, and he's coming on week by week.
Yeah, and I mean, because Seddon had a decent start. I think they thought he was a good player, and his crossing was there. And now we've got this scenario where the big lad, I'm not bothering with the name. I know he seems to be fit now. He got on the pitch and he had a header saved towards the Stam, as we'll be calling him, towards the end of the game, where he probably should have done better. But you're thinking, well, if Ewan Wilson's crossing seems to be his number one attribute, and they've got the guy whose aerial ability seems to be his number one attribute, that would get me going, because like we said, I just said earlier, Motherwell have had issues with creativity. I know they've scored a lot of goals, and but you're looking at, they've got about 1 million wingers, and they're not sure how they're going to cut. Every time I watch Motherwell, there's a new winger that's playing, and I can't keep up with it. But now it's like, well, they've got these good wide players. They can play dual tens. They've got like wing backs who are good. Suddenly you start thinking, all right, so Motherwell are actually able to play in loads of different ways, in loads of different fashions. They've got Robinson, who I've got his detractors, absolutely, and I don't rate Robinson terribly. But again, it's like when you've got all the strikers they've got will play a similar way, so it means that the rest of the team can continue to play in that way for them. And I still don't know if Motherwell are good, but you're starting to see that what a team that I thought were lacking, with the signings they've made, the wide players they've got, and then obviously how these wing backs are coming on, and the fact they've got Lennon Miller, you're like, they've got quite a lot of ways to maybe possibly kill you in a match.
100%. I think a lot of us looked at sort of Motherwell's summer transfer business, and you're seeing guys like Stamatolopoulos, thank you very much, that was being signed. Kofi Balmer, a Northern Irish guy who's named after Kofi Annan, and you're like, right, okay, this is all sort of gearing up for Motherwell being quite funny, and this is going to be fine. And then Stuart Kettlewell has basically said, no, these are constituent parts to what will become a good team, because they lost Theo Bair, Blair Spittle as their main attacking outlets through the summer. He brought Tony Watt back to the club, he's going to be a good soldier for them. He's got great work rate. He's not going to start and score every single week, but again, he's a different option. I think it's the different options that they have in terms of attacking players. Moses Abiye is a special teams player that comes on and scores in 90 plus minutes. Stamatolopoulos is a guy that's going to come on and give that aerial ability, and Zach Robinson's a pest. I'd like you, I don't rate him terribly highly, but he's definitely got a place, and he's definitely got a place in the Scottish Premiership team. We saw what he was able to do at Dundee as well. So I think they've got so much to.
And now they've got a goalie.
Oh my God,
Ashton, who was always there.
Ashton Oxborough, who sounds like a sort of small English town with thatched houses in it. It's like, the train's just stuck outside Ashton Oxborough. I won't be long. Like, the fact that he sat on the bench for a year is becoming more and more ridiculous as the weeks go on. That save that he made from Killian Phillips, sort of low down, the header that he's just sort of put into the bottom corner, stuff like that is just like that's what earns you points in these games. And he's been phenomenal for Motherwell in the last few weeks. And
I mean, Phillips probably a good place to start if we move over to St Mirren. He was quite popular at Aberdeen, wasn't he? Because he's like rangy, he can get up and down the pitch, he's aggressive, and it looks like he could, and it's a really fucking good goal. Because when I thought, like, again, I never thought he was like quite good enough for Aberdeen, but I could see where he looks built for this. If you know what I mean, you're built for Scotland. You should be coming here. This is where you will play your best football here. Would be my guess, Callum Phillips. You'll be appreciated here, and your attributes and your size and what you can give will be best sort of lit here. And it's a cracking goal he scores very early on.
It's superb. I mean, it's that sort of like the one touch hit sort of thing. Always looks good, but when he's flicked it up for himself and he bins it in the bottom corner, it's excellent. I think at Aberdeen it was always sort of like he came in and he did a job for them. I think his physicality. He is, like you're saying, he's a Scottish football sort of player. He's a St Mirren sort of player.
Yeah, he fits in that midfield perfectly. When you saw them all lined up, oh yeah, perfect. Another rangy, ball carrying style, aggressive, vertical midfielder. Aye.
Stephen Robinson knows what he likes, and he likes big laddies with big legs to just run, and that is what Killian Phillips is going to give you. I think the question mark at Aberdeen was maybe over his football and his technical ability, and what he could offer from that point of view, but. I mean, you see with that one little moment of magic in this game, it's like, well, he's obviously got something in his locker. There's a reason why he was at Crystal Palace so long and had his decent loan moves before he even came to Aberdeen. So yeah, there's definitely something there. And I think the more that he gets used to the system that St Mirren play and the players that are around about him, the likes of Boyd Munst and O'Hara and Olasanya ahead of him, obviously, it wasn't his day as such, but I mean, his improvement in recent times has been unbelievable. And yeah, I suppose it's like the disappointment from St Mirren's point of view is that
they'll feel they got cheated. They'll feel they got cheated. They feel
they got cheated, but Mark O'Hara missed a penalty as well.
Yeah.
And when Dan Casey was sent off, and that was an opportunity to come back to 2 each with a man advantage and properly make a difference in this game. Scott Tanser should not have been sent off. It's not a second yellow. I think it's really, really hard. O'Donnell sells it, an absolute belter. Fair play to him. Friend of the podcast, Stephen O'Donnell. I could never say anything bad about him, but they'll feel hard done by. Also, the Lennon Miller goal sort of seems to. It bounces off Miller's shoulder and then against his forearm, but it's so close to him, and it's a bit of a weird one. But I think ultimately the disappointment will be that St Mirren haven't built on a really good result against Hearts last weekend, and I suppose the expectation was that they could go to Fir Park, get a result, and really start motoring like they did at times last season. It just feels like another step backwards for them.
And they've got such a big squad. And I don't mean that as a like baggy squad. I mean it's like big in terms of there's a lot of boys there that you would be happy to use. With like Kilty, like Scott's had decent periods this season. You've got Van Veen, who I presume Robinson feels he's going to get something out of eventually. But even Smith Udua, he scored on his debut against Hibs. So you feel like he's got like a batch of players. He's not got tons of injuries at the moment. So I mean it's a wee bit. Yeah, it's like very stop-start season for them just now, St Mirren, and I don't know. You just assume that they're going to come out of it soon because they've got good players and their manager's good, and he's built a squad in his own image. But they'll be one of those. You'll have the boys arguing in the pub, drunk. One guy blaming the referee and everything that happened, and then the other guy saying, "Well, we got the chances to do it. We have to do it anyway." And they can, and both these things can be right. But what a world we live in. Now, Olasanya is now a 10 times better striker than Van Veen. I love it.
It's the beauty of the sort of stats world that we live in, Tony, that one result can completely change things. And coming into this game, they were unbeaten in 3, and now they've only won 1 in 5. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, is it danger time? I don't know. They're one of only 6 teams in the league that have won more than one game this season as well. So
they see the league's bonkers. Once again,
We'll give them the benefit of the doubt, shall we? But I think, looking at the games that are upcoming for them, Dundee United at home is one that they're going to be looking at relatively favourably, and then I mean Hearts away. Who knows what's going to happen with that? So we'll see how it comes. Tony, let's talk about your beloved Hibernian FC. They lost 1-0 at the hands of I think they've just moved into a new home at Ibrox, team called Rangers. Tom Lawrence scored a screamer. Mikola Kukurevich took one of the worst penalties I think I've ever seen in my life. And Triantis, very lucky not to get sent off for an animalistic lunge on Robin Cropper during the game as well. But listen, I think it's fair to say that Rangers were kind of the Rangers that we've seen this season. They weren't hugely overwhelming. They weren't a great prospect to watch. Hibs put a lot more into the game, maybe feel like they could have come away with a draw. How did you view it, Tony? And as a Hibs fan, how did you feel about this sort of performance away in Glasgow?
Well, this is sort of like maybe the third game in a row where you can see what David Gray's trying to do, and you can understand what this Hibs squad that's been built and the elements that are in it, and they're starting to come together. Obviously, the Kilmarnock game was the first time where you thought, right, that's a team that could possibly be built for the Scottish Premiership, but the Achilles heel of the late goal comes in there. So it's like, now we've done it a spread against a team that Hibs would expect to beat in St Johnston at home, and Hibs done that, and it probably could have been more. If we've been at the second half, Hibs absolutely battered them. And Kilmarnock away was just one of those that, we looked like a team that was built to be able to go to a place like that and absolutely get a result. But getting them at maybe the right time because they were playing in Europe, blah, 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 and it's still not pulling it through. And now going to Glasgow and doing it. So I would look at that as, well, there's not been maybe as many points as you'd want from those three performances. You've played like all types of teams in the league, if you understand what I mean, where you can maybe make a decent judgment about those three games, and there's an understanding of what this Hibs team can be. And I said this when we played Kilmarnock, this team's built for Scotland. Like, it's got, like, the players that aren't really doing that well are the ones that you would expect in terms of like your flair players, but the rest of the team is like, it's well built for playing in this league. You saw the set pieces. Rangers couldn't really live with Hibs at set pieces. I know that Hibs didn't score, but they had so many crosses going into the box all game. The long throws, Rangers never looked comfortable, and Rangers never really created anything from their own set pieces. And I'm pleased to see that with Marvin Ekpiteta, who's had three, I would say, really good games in a row after. You still feel a bit, when there's a 10-yard pass or anything less than that. It's weird because he does booming passes wide that are perfect. So I see them big long switches, and then when it's a 10-yard pass, it's like heart in your mouth. But he looks again like just a proper defender. He'll look really good in him. And O'Hara seemed to be building up some sort of relationship. And Bursic had a good game, making what is probably arguably the save of the season so far from Dessers. And then when you go into that midfield, Triantis again, it looks like that Kilmarnock game was not a once-off. I thought Triantis was really good in this match. I would argue that he won the midfield battle, and Rangers couldn't come through mid-Hibs, especially that 30 minutes after half-time. Hibs were just dominating the game. They were as much as you possibly can be camped in Rangers half at Ibrox. I felt like Hibs were in there, and him and Kwon, it's like you've got ability, they're cute, they're good on the ball, but they're also fucking massive. And that's a very good thing to have in a Scottish football sense. And then I said Miller, he had another one of those games. First half, he was really in trouble at points, I think, because Rangers' best performer, Jeff Day, and McCausland were causing him a bit of bother, and Cadden was maybe trying to stay up a bit too often. The second half, Miller, I thought, was brilliant, and he was one of the main ways Hibs were getting up the pitch. We had won tons of flick on. Again, they noticed, smart from Hibs, they noticed that they had, over on that side, Miller was much more athletic than he was going up against. They were able to chip balls into him, and he would win headers and get them on. So it all makes sense, and it's not overly pretty. I actually feel like Hibs aren't going to be pushovers. I actually think they're absolutely, if they can stop the late goal stuff, and that's not happened for this couple of games there, then they actually look like they would be one of the most Scottish football-y teams in the league, which is something I never really thought I would say about Hibs.
What I found about sort of really interesting about this is that obviously for so long we've rightly lauded the sort of attacking arsenal that Hibs have, and the talent they have in attacking areas. And in this game, I suppose you're looking at it and it's like you've kind of got Kukurevich as the number 9, but then you've got Josh Campbell and Junior Hoylett. Other than that, you've got Chris Gadden, who's mainly been used as a sort of right back. Triantis and Kwon in the midfield certainly aren't out-and-out attackers. So it's interesting to see that the better performances are certainly one of their best performances of the season. Unlucky not to come away with a result. It was kind of without these guys. Obviously, you brought on Eli Yuan and Dwight Gale came on as well. You're missing Martin Boyle at the moment. Molotnikov didn't come off the bench. But it's interesting that it's almost like you don't need to force these attacking players in to create opportunities. It's about using the guys at your disposal to be able to do that, and maybe using these guys sparingly rather than just chucking them all in the same team is the best way to go about it. It adds a bit more balance to what Hibs are trying to do.
No, I think that's a really good point, because I think Hibs kind of maybe lost a bit of control when they chucked McCurdy and Levitt on. Like, it was going well, and I'm not blaming Gray. He obviously feels like eventually he has to start throwing the dice. But managers always do this when they put on more attackers, but really, like, actually, man, we're creating chances as it is. There's no reason to change the makeup of the team at this point. As tempting as it must be, especially if one of them's Harry fucking McCurdy. But that's another conversation we can have. But yeah, it just looks like that Hibs team, there's more ways that it's going to be able to play, and it looks like it could stand up to a game at Rugby Park when it's going to get really, really physical. It can go to Ibrox when it can actually have players in the middle of the park that are brave enough to take on the ball, and you're able to create chances, find a weakness against Rangers, which was obviously just their height, really. And Hoylett was putting in so many boys. Hoylett looks a brilliant signing. He's played 70 minutes and he played half an hour against St Johnston. He's been arguably the best player on the pitch in both of those games. So that just looks like what was just a really smart signing for Hibs. But yeah, it's just so frustrating when you create that. I mean, Kwon had one that shaved the post. It was Kukurevich, that penalty. I'm fucking losing my fucking mind when he done it. He doesn't even do it. It's executed poorly as well. It's not that, you know, when you see players do it and they do it right, but it's still shit because the goalie, he does the star about 10 minutes too early. He's still miles away from the ball. And then when he stars, he looks directly at the left-hand side of where he's going to put the ball. And then obviously, he has to look down again, because the reason that players like Bruno Fernandes is so good is that he doesn't have to look at the ball. So he does the little hop and jump, and then he's looking the goalie because he knows he's so good at it. And O'Hara done a bit of the stutters as well for his penalty in the Motherwell game. Lads, I don't know if he's good enough. I think there's Frank thing about being able to not look at the ball, stutter, and then just ping the ball wherever the goalie goes. It's a really hard thing to do. And there's a reason that the players who do it are normally some of the better players in the world, and they perfect it over so long because they take penalties all the time. I've never seen Kukurevich take a penalty, and suddenly he's doing the stars. You're like, you're a Ukrainian target man. You smash the ball. It's a very simple, that's your role. That's who you are. You go ahead and do that. And it fucked him, because in the second half when he was on, his head was gone. You could tell he barely got involved. And it was really annoying, because I said to you, Hibs will not get a better chance to pick up a result at Ibrox. They could have scored. I think if he scores that goal at half time, looking at how they played second half, there's actually a really good chance Hibs could have just went on and won that match.
I think it was definitely a bold choice for Mikola Kukurevich to try a new technique for the first time ever in his life during a game.
Ibrox. You never get a penalty.
I know. It's like when someone at work asks you to do something that you've never done before, and you're just like, yeah, no bother me, that's absolutely fine. It's like, no, I've done that tons of times actually. That's fine, mate. It'll be done by close of play, mate. Be done by close of business, not a bother.
The minute they turn their back, on YouTube, try to watch a video of how to actually do it.
By close of business, the building's on fire because you've done it so badly. It's like, it was terrible. From a Rangers point of view, myself and Fowler a couple of weeks ago were discussing the merits, or maybe not so, of Tom Lawrence. Is he a good Rangers player, or is he just a good player for the Scottish leagues? Is he going to be the guy that's going to take Rangers to the next level? I have my doubts. What a finish though. What a goal that is from Tom Lawrence. And you look at the quality of some of the goals that he has scored in blue, he's definitely got so much to add to this team. It's just the question mark still remains, is he going to be good enough for Rangers to overthrow Celtic eventually? I'm still unsure.
Lawrence should be used more as a squad player. He seems to be really fancied by Clement, and there's room for Tom Lawrence, but he seems to be a go-to guy, which I don't think he has. He's not good enough to be that. He's probably just not that style of player. He's a bit of a luxury player. And Rangers can't afford to have luxury players in their lineup for exactly like that. When you've played a game in Europe but you're not playing very well against the rest of us, and they can ping in goals like that, it's an absolute peach. And obviously Miller goes down easy, which is a feature of his play, that he always try to buy fucking fouls when he could stay up. But it's definitely onside, and it's a brilliant curl. As I said, Jeff Day, I thought was really good for them. Raskin had a poor game. He just was anonymous. I don't know what's happened to him. When he first came in, I thought Raskin looked really, really good, but he's just like nothing. He's blah now. He doesn't really do anything. And Barron, who I know some people aren't. I think Barron's been pretty good for Rangers. I think he's played a lot more than he was meant to. I don't think he's meant to be playing this role as much. Clement said it himself after that Barron's been playing this number 6 role. That isn't exactly where he wants him to be. But I still think he's right now. Barron should definitely be in that starting 11, and I still think he's been one of their better performing players at the moment. And Czerny, I thought, was stinking. He had some good opportunities to hit some good shots out wide, and he got a bit of joy, as I said, in the first half from Abita, who struggled a bit in there. I think him and Miller both struggled for periods in the first half. That was because Hibs were funneling Rangers down the side. Obviously, the reason they played Josh Campbell is so it could turn into a 3, blah, blah, blah. And they wanted people that could press and run. So he got there, but the shots were terrible. And then looking back at it, for Rangers, I mean, Hibs had 18 shots on goal. And then you've got Rangers who, I mean, the Dessers chance was a sitter. Outside of that, that was the only clear-cut opportunity. I would argue Hibs made more clear-cut opportunities at Rangers, at Ibrox, and that's a Hibs team that have arguably not been playing well. So if that's how the Rangers that you're going to get that stale after those European games, if I'm other Scottish clubs, I'd be rubbing my hands because there is something to be had there. There was absolutely zero reason why Hibs shouldn't have come away with points there, and they'll be absolutely kicking themselves because Hibs are going into a decent run of fixtures now. We've played at Ibrox and Parkhead already. We're coming at a decent run of fixtures now. And what a way to kick that off is if you pick up a point or 3 points at Ibrox, suddenly the place is absolutely buzzing. So it's really sad, but from a Hibs perspective, it's good to see the signings seem to be making a bit of sense now. The makeup of the team makes sense. It looks like it's got more than one way to play a match, which is something Gray spoke about constantly over pre-season, about being able to switch shapes, switch styles. So that's something he wants to have, and that's good to see that he's something he's been saying that you now can kind of witness. And unfortunately with Bowie getting injured, because Kugrevich has been quite good. Apart from that, he's been all right. He's not had a lot to go on. He still managed to score a couple of goals, but Bowie's just really mobile, really strong. Bowie was going to be good. I think you could see it with the tiny wee bits. So it's sad that that we're not going to get to see that yet, and we'll see Dwight Gale, and he's got that header that went just wide. But disappointing.
Just one last thing to note from this. In the aftermath, I saw a Rangers fan that had photoshopped Vaclav Czerny's face onto Nicky Law's body, which I thought was very funny. And Philippe Clement doing the slosh in the post-match press conference to prove that John Souttar, I don't know, man, it's silly.
It was a penalty.
It was obviously a penalty.
He lifts his arm up to get it. It's a bit then he's doing so very animated. I don't mind managers because I know that's how I would be. I would definitely be. I mean, I do it when I do anyway. If I was allowed to on a view for the terrace, I'd be out that seat all the time. I've done it once and I would just ask quietly to sit down. So
but Tony, with the new setup, maybe you're able to do it now because you're probably shorter off the stool than you are sitting on it.
But I don't mind when managers or pundits that use their body to explain. I think it's a good way to explain things, even though I think he was talking shit. But it is a good way. I don't know what the legs were and all that, but again, with Clement, it's like managers just don't know. Like, you put yourselves in position sometimes, and now you without it being your fault and doing nothing weird, you can move yourself into being a joke figure, and it's very unfair. But it is, in this day and age, something that does need to kind of be considered.
Caixinha in the bush, Murty doing the headstand, Philippe Clement doing a weird dance at a press conference, man. It's what we're here for.
Because he comes across quite a serious manager, very serious, hard.
That's what makes it funnier.
Hard knocks, and then you move it that, but then that can change the way you're perceived, it's ridiculous. But these things can and will be used against you.
In a court of law.
Yeah.
In the court of Nicky Law. So, right, well... We'll move on. Let's go to Tynecastle Park. Heart of Midlothian 1, Ross County 1. Ronan Hale scoring a stunning strike in the first half in that one, and then it was Lawrence Shankland in the 10th minute, whenever it was, right at the end of the game. His first goal of the season, getting Hearts their second point of the season, their first since the opening weekend against Rangers. Tony, I just want you to quiz me. First and foremost, what do you want to know about Hearts? And I'll tell you.
It's really annoying because because there's so many jambles on this pod, I never watch the Hearts games. Because like the week I was like, I'll watch. I know Rob, I'm on with Rob or whoever, or Fowler, or whoever. I'm going to watch So I thought I'll watch the Dundee Aberdeen game. So I'm not getting to enjoy any of this. I barely see them in terms of like watching for 90 minutes. But on the glance in this game, you did create more chances. Is that fair than what I've seen in other games?
100%. I mean, in reality, we should have won this game 3 or 4-1. With the quality of chances, Shankland hit the bar. He also missed a header that 10 times out of 10 last season he would have put in the back of the net. Cammy Devlin inside 2 minutes had a shot blocked on the line. I still cannot believe how Leak got his legs to it. It's a remarkable,
what a block, guys!
Remarkable piece of defending. It's one of those you just throw your hands up and say fair play. I think Devlin didn't even know he was there. He just saw the ball coming out and had a shot at goal. That came from a Ross Laidlaw error. Laidlaw otherwise was good. He made a few good saves. There was opportunities for likes of Alan Forrest had a couple of shots. George Grant had a couple of shots. Benny Beringame had a shot. Kenneth Vargas. Hearts had their opportunities in this game. But I think the worrying thing once again was that Ross County scored against the run of play. It was a lovely flick in the first place from Ronan Hale to put Connor Randall through on goal. Benny Beringame will come on to him in a second, makes a really good tackle, and then it's a striker's dream to see the ball rolling at you like that, because you just aim for outside the post, knowing it will come back in, sticks it beyond Craig Gordon. The worrying thing is that when Hearts lose goals right now, the players tend to lose the impetus that they did have. Hearts started the game well. They were getting into good attacking areas. They were getting through on goal, creating opportunities. And after that, it just became difficult. And they didn't look like they had the ideas or the sort of bravery to try and get the through ball and try and force it forward.
Which is like the polar opposite last season, because last season Hearts would concede goals and go 2 goals behind and stuff. And it never seemed to really blink, especially at Tynecastle. Hearts would just continue doing sort of plan A, and just continue sort of just doing it, knowing that they've got faith in it, they've got trust in what they're doing, and get there. But now it's just, again, it's like we're talking about with Kilmarnock, when I'm saying like words that would never be used about a McInnes team or that specific Kelly team. It's like that when you see that, well, it's just amazing what can happen once that confidence is zapped from you.
Yeah, 100%. I think the one thing that I would say, the positive, is that Hearts did equalise in this game. They did grind it out, and it's a goal in the 96th minute that were able to get them there. Poor defending from County, man. They will be kicking themselves, because that's terrible defending from the corner kick. But even before that, the chance that was created for Shankland that led to the corner showed that Hearts were still making opportunities. And unlike the St Mirren game last week, when the second St Mirren goal went in, Hearts kind of disappeared a wee bit.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't seem to have anything other than playing it out to Oyugoki at right back, and him playing it out to play was kind of the tactic in the second half. At least in this one, there was sort of like there was a sign of a pulse there that they were able to dig deep. And Liam Fox said that after the game as well. He's like, there's not many positives to take out of it. We're not celebrating a draw. We never will. But at least that's something. At least there's a goal. At least Shankland's got a goal, and he's a spree. He has been a sort of spree goal scorer in his career. When he gets one, he tends to get a few on the bounce. Obviously, going away to Azerbaijan this week and then Pittodrie on Sunday, it's going to be a tough ask. But at least there's a sign of life there, I suppose. And there was one standout performance. Benny Beringame is so good, man. Like, he's so good. And we've known it for years with Benny Beringame. Obviously, with all the injuries that he's had, it's stopped him sort of getting a move to what I believe, when he's fully fit, he can play in the English Premier League. I genuinely think that. I think he's a fantastic footballer. He was brilliant. One of his best games for Hearts, bizarrely, in a 1-1 draw at home to Ross County on Saturday. But he was winning tackles, tracking back. He was driving forward with the ball that we've not seen him do a huge amount in Maroon. But when he does, it's very exciting because he's got pace and he can dribble. He had a shot at goal. He was all action, and he was so good defensively, so good going forward. He kept the ball as he always does. And that's the sort of like, you can tell Tony I'm maybe clinging on to positives right now, but I mean, that is a very obvious positive, just staring me right in the face. Beringame was the best player on the park on Saturday.
That is a big positive, though, because Hearts have not been able to get Beringame on the pitch. And as me and you have spoke on here before, that he's like clearly Hearts, arguably the best player after like Shankland, in terms of like what the level that this guy can be. And it's that catch-22. Is that the reason he's probably still here is because of those injuries? But the reason you can't get him on the park all the time is because... So it's like you don't know... It's be careful what you wish for stuff. I don't know. You can't have it both ways, possibly. How was Forrester then? Obviously, I saw fans sort of wanting him to be put in. The two full-backs that have played instead of him, the two new signings, have both had sort of honking games this season. So how did the young lad get on?
I think it's interesting with Gerald Taylor because, yeah, he's had sort of high-profile gaffes, I suppose, but we saw enough of him to say, like, right, he's going to be a good player, and then he's done his ACL. So that's probably him... That's probably his heart's career over, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because he's only on loan. And Dan Oyegoke, he's just not had enough minutes at right back, to be honest. He was kind of signed as cover for right back and right centre back. And I think that with Liam Fox coming in, he wanted to stamp his authority. And as the B team manager, he was always going to put a youngster into this game. Macaulay Tate was back on the bench as well. Forrester came in and physically he's ready. He was barging players out the way. He's got a bit of an engine on it. He did tire quite a lot. He probably stayed on a little bit too long for my liking because he's playing at this intensity at this level. He cramped up a wee bit with about 10 minutes to go. He didn't come off until the 90th minute. I feel like he maybe should have been hooked a wee bit earlier, but physically he's ready. I think he just needs to get used to the pace of the game a wee bit. I think he's the sort of guy that if we continue to bleed him in rather than starting him every single week, that'll see a huge benefit for him. Especially in the first half, he was stepping forward and finding passes that maybe Gerald Taylor wouldn't look for because Taylor's a sort of bomb forward and try and get to the byline sort of player. He was finding Shankland, Devlin, Beningame, Grant with really sort of smart and really a lot of conviction in his passing in the first half. That kind of dissipated in the second, and I think overall you've got to say fair play to him for the level of performance because coming into a team that's not won all season is bottom of the table
not nice.
as a 19-year-old right back, playing in the back line. I think he acquitted himself well, and he should take some confidence out of that. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the squad list for Baku for Dinamo Minsk yet, but I'd imagine he'll be on the plane for that as well. So yeah, some opportunities for him to play definitely, and I think that Hearts fans will always want young players to come into the team, and they'll always give them the benefit of the doubt. If they do misplace a pass, it will be applause rather than booing, and I think he got a lot of that on Saturday. And
last thing before we talk a wee bit about County, how do you feel about is the team just better off out none of the summer signings? Is it that simple?
No, I don't think it is. I think that genuinely it's a very good squad of players. The players are all good. And we're speaking about it with Kilmarnock earlier on. It's a confidence issue. It's a mentality thing. When you lose one, you think, all right, well, we'll try and get it back next week.
Just at this game specifically, like they left out every single player that was signed in the summer.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was by design. I don't think that was Liam Fox making a point as such. I don't think that's the case. I think Danda came on and Spittle came on, and again, both of them, they added something different because they were moving about the pitch. They were trying to find angles and find opportunities to move the ball about. I think all of them will become important players by the end of the season. You've got to remember Danda started relatively slowly at County as well. It took him a bit of time to get going there. I think with Blair Spittle, it will probably be the same, but I don't think it was Liam Fox proving a point or making a point about anything. I think it was just that was the team that he thought would be the best. Devlin and Beningame together again in the midfield. It was something that was superb for us a couple of years ago. Vargas keeping his place because we know what he's capable of. Shankland obviously keeping his place. Alan Forrest hasn't had as much of an opportunity this season, but this time last season he was a really key player for us, and the season before. So yeah, I don't think he was proving a point. I think it was just the lineup that was that Liam Fox decided was the best for the opposition.
And for Ross County, what do you think about, obviously, the sort of really, I don't know if it's a big name sign. I always find these ones tough to. I spoke about this guy before because I knew Hibs were probably interested in him when Montgomery was the manager and Nisbet in the midfield. I mean, how did he perform? Because he's keeping. They went with. They've got shitloads of centre midfielders, Ross County, and they only went with 2 in this game, which I thought was quite interesting because I've seen Ross County this season when they've used 4 central midfielders right across there, and he's chopped and changed that quite a lot, and I think including in the in the St Johnston game for last week, I think there was maybe a little bit of surprise that certain players were like Silvers, where he was playing, was it maybe a bit slightly different than what you would expect? So, I mean, how was that midfield makeup for you?
It was good. I think it was like so much of what Ross County were doing is what so many teams do at Tynecastle. They kind of sit off you a wee bit and sort of say, right, how can you break us down? How can you come at us? And I think that Josh Nisbet, he's so short, man. Like, there was at one stage I was like, oh, he's not that small. It's because he was standing next to Cammy Devlin. I was like, right, okay, that's why he looks like a sort of normal height. But he's really tidy with the ball at his feet. And I think that what Ross County did really effectively, only on a few occasions, but every time they looked dangerous, was transition from back to front. And if that was through Eli Campbell or Mikey Affetti or whoever it was, finding the player in the midfield to drive forward. And what I thought was interesting was obviously Chilvers is kind of the attacking side of those
was he playing
players.
as like a false nine? I was trying to work out how this was, because Chilvers seemed to be used differently maybe than he was in the St Johnston game, but he was really good.
When they had the ball, yeah, he was more advanced, but so often they were sort of camped behind the ball, which is absolutely the right thing to do against a team that's struggling in an attacking sense. What I thought was interesting is that Connor Randall was bursting forward quite often. Like, he was almost like the man's spare. It's almost like Devlin and Beningame and George Grant, who was dropping back in, were looking at Nisbet and Chilvers and being like, right, we can't let these two more natural ball players get on the ball and try and create something. But so often Hale would drop deeper, he'd find the flick inside. It was Connor Randall who was bursting. So it was kind of like a triple threat from that Ross County midfield. Nisbet was quite often the one actually maybe sitting a wee bit deeper to be the guy that when the ball came out, he had the control and the wherewithal to keep it and sort of recycle the ball and keep it moving. So it was... County will be kicking themselves that they didn't win the game, but I think more from the perspective of it was a weak goal to lose rather than they dominated and they deserved it on that sort of count. But the midfield three for County, I do like it, because Chilvers, I think, has got a lot about him. He's a stocky wee guy as well. He's got a build about him that he's gonna be able to. He won't be bullied. Put it that way. He won't be bullied by anybody in Scottish football. Josh Nisbet, tidy footballer. Interesting to see what he can do. It's more of a sort of creative point of view.
Lots of tiny midfielders. Because the Turing's small as well. Like, there's loads of tiny.
100%. But Connor Randall really impressed me, man. It was like a captain's performance from him as well. He ran himself into the ground. Like, he properly gave everything.
I think a few maps might think there. I think County are better than what people think. And I think they've added players, recently with guys like Chilvers that are coming through, and they're all starting to play a bit more. That as long as they don't get too many injuries, I think that they've got the makeup of the teams quite nice. And Hale selling Murray for 6 figures at 32 and bringing in Hale, it looks like smart business. Because Hale came with the YouTube reel from Northern Ireland, and he's not really missed a beat. He scored exactly what you thought, all types of goals, an array of style of goals. He's got a nice flick, like you say. He drops deep because he's not particularly quick, but he does the thing that I love strikers. Love them. They shoot early. I'm a big fan of trying to do that. I think they get so many times that they're the guys that either score goals when people think the goalie should have done better. It's because they're not ready.
Yeah.
And the reason there's a reason that they score those types of goals, and he doesn't need loads of backlift. He scored nice lobs. So I think just really clever from the scouting team. You never know how it's going to work. But I think it's because physically they probably when they look, they've got White in that style that maybe they thought that Hale they'd be able to use him in the way that he wants to be used, where he can drop off, he can play a bit of football, and start 6 goals in 10 games, 3 of them in the league. That's fucking good going. When County didn't look like that they've got themselves motoring to the stage that I think that they possibly can for this season.
I really liked him, and again, Jordan White is just, he wins everything in the air, man. He wins everything, which means the likes of Chilvers and Ronan Hale will have a field day, because he doesn't just win the header, he wins it with intent. Like, he's able to flick it. It reminds me of obviously the man I'm comparing him to is a lot more mobile and a better footballer, but Lee Miller was so good at getting up early, winning the header and putting it into someone's path, keeping possession for his team with
deliberate headers, deliberate, not just fucking flicks, completely deliberate, and that there's a skill in that. And like you said, County County, I mean, as much as they don't like it with White because it's not sexy, it's just a great way up the pitch. And they're not that good that they can pass that up, especially now that Brophy's as Fowler, and I think you were talking about the other week, is a man who's just had his day. And we just have to accept that.
So
where are we?
Right. Oh. So we've overrun already, Tony. But I mean, let's see. What did we learn from St Johnston 0 Celtic 6?
I'm going to be honest, man. I watched this, and I've said on this podcast numerous times that I'm numb to Celtic, and I sometimes find it hard to come on and talk about them. It's like I just don't notice. It's got, again, just how good they are and the way they played like under Ange and stuff. After the first 6 months, I'm just like, you just take it for granted and you find it hard to talk it through. I have to say, different with this one. I thought they were absolutely fucking brilliant. They were scintillating. And that's the third time in the last couple of weeks that I've seen them that they've been like that. And obviously I saw them against Bratislava as well, who I know are probably like the weakest team you could play in the Champions League, but it's not a Champions League team. And they still absolutely treated them like they treat us in that game. And that is still a big deal. And they were tremendous to watch in this game. Some of the goals they scored, Celtic, like the team goals that they scored in this, I have to say I was able to enjoy this one. And that second goal, the second and possibly Ida's goal, which is maybe the sixth, and they are like just, I don't care who you are, you're enjoying watching that goal. Like the one, so Johnston actually, they rope him in for that second goal. They actually do try and press, and they keep it for a while, and they nearly get there a couple of times, and Celtic keep on moving it around, and then they eventually get it moved and out wide, and then the ball, and it's got the movement all around, nice interchanging passing, and then on top of that, a little lovely layoff, which is like a sexy little layoff, and then Bernardo scoring like a long range pinger, and at the bottom, I'm like, wow, that is just a fucking brilliant goal. It's got all types of things that you're looking for from a goal in that one.
They're so good, man. They're so good. It's fucking infuriating. Because Austin Trusty came in, obviously. CCV, Cameron Carter-Vickers missing out. Who cares, man? Like this guy can obviously play football. He's part of the build-up for that Bernardo goal you were talking about. Alex Barrier came on in the second half, and it's his little back heel flick for Adam Ida to put in the back of the net. Callum McGregor scoring from outside the box again.
Well, this is something I was going to say. Like, why would Callum McGregor? It's like the last thing we needed was Callum McGregor turning into prime Gerrard. We didn't need another way for Celtic to score goals into you. And then he's retired for Scotland and suddenly found that he's got an absolute... He's always in a decent shot, but he scores a long-range effort in every single game now.
What was that? Was it the BBC Vox Pop before a general election once? That's that old woman. Oh, not another one. Oh, God. And that's basically how I feel watching Celtic just now, because obviously, I mean,
another string to your bow.
I reference this all the time, but what Brendan Rodgers did with Celtic first time around was he made Callum McGregor, James Forrest, guys like that into international standard footballers. He's a wonderful coach. He's an absolute fucking weirdo, but he's such a good coach, and he's able to get the best out of these players. Like even like guys like Kuhn. It's like, Kuhn looked all right last season. You're like, right, okay, he's going to be fine. All of a sudden, he's absolutely superb. And yes, obviously, people listening to this will be shouting, they spent £30 million in the window. They did, right? Yes, 100%.
This is why we're seeing there's a step up. That's why I'm saying that you can actually visibly see the step up in the Celtic team. So the money's spent with Engels coming in, and then so it's just like, so there is, and yes, he did spend 30 million, and yes, it fucking looks like it.
Actually, that's it. They've spent the money, and it's like, oh, right, okay, yeah, they spent that money. Like, that money has been spent.
Should have done this years ago.
Lawwell sitting on top of some briefcases full of cash, just like, it's all right, this 12-year-old Arnie Engels is going to be good soon. Like, it's just, it's nonsense, man. But at the same time, I'm just trying to think, like, See, afterwards, Brendan Rodgers said, I said to the players, we need to go into this game with a Champions League mentality. If I was Andy Kirk, I'd have been like, oh, fuck off, mate. Can you not just go into it with, Falkirk in the League Cup mentality? Because you weren't as good in that game. Can you give us a chance? But yeah, they're scintillating. They're wonderful to watch.
I don't... Maida playing at the top of his game. And now his volley that got disallowed is an absolute peach of a goal as well. So you've got the two wingers like that, and then Kyogo's sort of got back to his best. His goal, the two goals, the little, the slot with the bounce, it looks like a piece of piss. Other players in Scotland are fucking it up. He just absolutely perfectly, and it nestles perfectly in there. And then his movement for the goal when he comes back on side is brilliant, and it's a lovely ball in, and he just plants the header. I'm not sure. Maybe they're not as good as what they look right now, but I'm struggling to see how anyone beats them this season. And it could be record points, and it's definitely a treble. That's for sure.
I think that's already set in stone, really, isn't it? It's you even think about it, it's oh, thank God, Arne Engels is going off. Who's coming on? Oh, it's Rio Hatate, right?
They're not even playing him now, and they're beating teams 6-0.
That sounds fucking perfect to me. Finally, is there anything to say about St Johnston? I suppose after games like this, I don't think there is too much you can actually say about them because they've just been so comprehensively battered that you've not really probably learned all that much.
The problem, I said this a couple of weeks ago, and I was I wish I'd been on the week after, because I was saying after the Hibs game, which Kimpioka got sent off, and I knew they were still missing Sidibe. So they were I was that team without strikers, absolutely awful. Then I thought, on and oh, they've scored. I was there's no way that this team's going to score any goals. And then I think they scored 3 in one match. But it's safe to say that Nicky Clark isn't going to score 2 free kicks. But when I saw the lineup in this game, I was just I was cringing for them. I was cringing for that. There is absolutely nothing. There is nothing to go on there. That doesn't mean they're all crap. That just means that none of them are creative. None of them are quick. They're all Carey maybe slightly more than a cog because he's got a bit of a sweet left foot for a crop. But it is a group of cogs playing 11 cogs playing against Celtic. Celtic didn't have anything to worry about. They didn't have to think about anything. That's probably why they even brought their best, because there was just zero for them to even consider. And a few times they get in behind, and you mentioned them earlier with Trusty. He would just go back, he just put his arm across him, right, enough of you out the way. And Kirk's done a lot better than I think a lot of us thought he would in the opening games. And he's had a couple of assists and he's looked all right, but it was unfair. It was unfair that the St Johnston team was going up against that Celtic.
It was 11 cogs going up against a spaceship, and I think leaving the podcast on the revelation that Nicky Clark has not turned into the second incarnation of Juninho Pernambucano is probably a good way to bring it to a close. Tony, thank you very, very much for joining me on this.
Enjoyed
that. It was class, man. As always, thank you all very much for listening as well. As per usual, there is an absolute ton of content on our Patreon, so please, if you can, and if you haven't already, subscribe to that. You'll get a wee access to the Discord where it's popping off with daily quizzes and all that kind of stuff as well. You get so much bang for your buck with a Patreon subscription, so please do, if you haven't, chuck us £2, £5 or £7 a month if you're feeling flush. We'll have another show on Thursday, but until then, Tony, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, very much for tuning in. I'll speak to you again soon. Goodbye.